It's July 22nd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with U.S. President Joe Biden dropping out of the 2024 presidential race. Biden has withdrawn from the race after weeks of facing pressure to do so from his fellow Democrats. He is now endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris to be the new Democratic nominee. South Korea's military over the weekend blasted anti-Pyongyang loudspeaker broadcasts on all fronts after North Korea continued to send trash-carrying balloons over the border. This was the first time in 6 years that the military aired them in full scale along all regions of the border. Starting Monday, local training hospitals begin posting job openings for trainee doctors to help reduce disruptions to medical services. They're set to begin training in September. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced that he will not run for a second White House term, 107 days out from the election. Formally removing himself as the presidential candidate, he is now endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris to run in his place. Lee Seung-jae starts off.
Taking to social media platform X on Sunday, U.S. President Joe Biden announced he's dropping out of the November U.S. presidential election. In the message, Biden said it was the greatest honor being able to serve the country as president for the past 4 years, but believed it's in the best interest of his party and the country to drop out of the race and focus on the remainder of his term. The announcement also comes as Biden has been under growing pressure from fellow party members to drop out of the race after struggling against his rival Donald Trump during last month's televised debate. Many have questioned his cognitive ability to run the country for another 4 years, especially given his age. While announcing his intention to drop out of the race, Biden also formally endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to run in the presidential election. In a written statement on Sunday, Harris called Biden's decision a selfless and patriotic act, adding that she's honored to be endorsed by the incumbent. Harris vowed to do everything she can to not only unite the Democratic Party, but to unite the country and to defeat former President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, in the wake of Biden's announcement, U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson called on the president to resign immediately, stressing that if the president is not fit to run, he's not fit to serve. Johnson also hinted that Republicans could potentially challenge a switch in the Democrats' presidential candidate. He stressed that every state has its own system, adding that it's not as easy as just switching out one candidate for another. Taking to his social media platform Truth Social on Sunday, former President Donald Trump said Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve. Trump also took a jab at the vice president, saying that Harris would be easier to beat than Biden. The Trump camp was quick to attack Harris after Biden's endorsement, taking to YouTube to criticize her immigration policies. In a separate statement, the camp called Harris enabler-in-chief, saying there is no distance between the two, referring to her and Biden. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
North Korea's continued sending of trash-carrying balloons has prompted South Korea to expand its loudspeaker propaganda broadcasts in all frontline units over the weekend. The broadcasts have been on since 6 a.m. this morning again and will run for 16 hours straight. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
South Korea's military on Sunday conducted anti-Pyongyang loudspeaker broadcasts on all fronts in response to North Korea's continued deliveries of trash-carrying balloons. The South has been partly airing the broadcasts in different areas near the border since last Thursday. However, this is the first time the military aired full-scale propaganda broadcasts along all regions of the border since the 2018 Inter-Korean Military Agreement. Sunday's broadcasts, comprised of news and K-pop, were aired from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. The Joint Chiefs of Staff warned that the regime will pay a fatal price for its provocative acts in frontline areas, and that all responsibility for this current situation lies with the North. The military's Stepped Up campaign comes in response to the North's continued sending of balloons. On Sunday, North Korea sent another 360 balloons, mostly carrying scraps of paper. Around 110 of them fell in Seoul and North Gyeonggi-do province. This is the 9th round of delivery sent by the North since May. The regime is presumed to have sent a total of more than 2,000 balloons so far in protest against anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaigns by North Korean defectors in the south. Choi Min-dang, Arirang News.
Starting today, the government begins recruiting trainee doctors for the second half of this year to fill up the vacancies left by trainee doctors who walked away from their work over the government's medical reform. For more, let's turn to lawyer Kim Ji-soo. Welcome to the program.
Hello.
Good morning. Recruitment for trainee doctors begins today, and junior doctors applying will get an opportunity to earn specialist licenses. Could you walk us through the process? Is it the same as the regular recruitment process?
So this whole process begins with an online application followed by an evaluation of qualifications and a final selection of interview. And while the core steps were similar to the previous regular recruitment process, additional measures have been introduced for this particular occasion, as special immunitive provisions for those returning from the strike. So this provision is designed to help trainee doctors catch up on missed training and qualify for specialist license without being penalized. And as a whole, it aims to ensure a swift return to normal operations in hospitals. And it seems that the government is now encouraging doctors to return by offering favorable conditions for completing their training and earning licenses rather than threatening suspensions or indictments.
Well, I do have to point out how those who have resigned are to be granted an exemption if they decide to return to the training program starting in September. But the question is, what happens if they don't return by September?
So if trainee doctors do not return by September, they will lose the special exemptions offered by the government on the plate, which could severely impact their career progression and opportunities for specialization. And additionally, they might have to fulfill mandatory military service or other obligations without deferment for medical training.
So far, over 7,600 trainee doctors have officially resigned. They account for nearly 56% of all trainee doctors who walked away from their duties. What options do they have now? I mean, what will they do now that their resignations have been fully processed?
So for the 7,600 trainee doctors who have already resigned, have three options. First, they can return to work and take advantage of favorable terms to resume training without penalties. And secondly, they can explore other career paths within or outside the medical field. And lastly, professional impact they must consider. So continued absence may affect professional standing and future opportunities. So, however, for me, it seems that rejoining the training program by September is your best option to minimize disruption to their career paths.
Right, that still remains as their best option, although hopes appear to be really low among them. Now, some medical professors are about to boycott training programs for junior doctors in protest over the government's push for, accepting the resignations of striking trainees. Can the government actually hold those medical professors responsible for such an act?
So the government's capacity to hold medical professors accountable for boycotting training program is indeed constrained. And according to recent reports, the boycott by professor is part of a larger protest against the government's policies, including the increase in medical school admissions and the acceptance of trainee doctor resignations. And while the government may not have direct means to penalize the professors, it can address the issue through institutional channels. And medical associations and universities may take action if professors' actions disrupt training programs or violate institutional agreements. However, given the nature of this protest, the government is more likely to focus on resolving the underlying issues through the negotiation and policy adjustments rather than imposing direct penalties on the professors.
Definitely, and it's not just medical professors. Some trainee doctors asked the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials to investigate the country's health minister, accusing him of abusing power and interfering with the exercise of their rights. Can this health minister be held responsible here? I mean, how likely is it? And what happens if he does get held responsible?
So the trainee doctors, along with medical professors, have filed a complaint against the health minister, citing abuse of power related to the decision to increase the medical school quota by 2,000 seats. So they argued that this decision was bypassed by the president's authority and led to significant disruption in the medical field. So if the Corruption Investigation Office finds substantial evidence of misconduct, the health minister could face legal consequences such as administrative sanctions or criminal charges. And this could definitely lead to political ramifications and necessitate a review of the policies in question.
Well, you mentioned this. Returning to work still remains as an option for those junior doctors. That's why the government continues its efforts to persuade those junior doctors to return to their patients by allowing those doctors in non-metropolitan areas to apply to work at hospitals in greater Seoul area here. Why might this not be the best solution here?
While this strategy may attract some doctors back, it risks exacerbating the shortage of medical professionals in rural areas which are already undeserved. This could lead to a significant healthcare disparity, negatively impacting patient care and health outcome in those regions. So a balanced approach that addresses the needs of both metropolitan and rural area is very crucial. And the doctors argue that new recruits would prefer high-paying fields in urban areas, leaving rural regions undeserved.
All right. Thank you so much for your insights and your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The South Korean defense industry continues to see positive momentum, recording increased sales and profits in the second quarter of this year. According to Yonhap Infomix on Monday, the four major defense companies, Hanwha Aerospace, Korea Aerospace Industries, Hyundai Rotem, and LIG Next One saw further growth in the second quarter thanks to a large backlog of orders. The combined operating profit of the four major defense companies is estimated at $296.58 million. Now, the figure marks a 107.4% increase compared to the same period last year. The estimated combined sales of the four companies in the second quarter came out to $3.76 billion, a 28.8% increase on year. Now, ramyeon has become one of South Korea's strong and reliable exports. With overseas shipments of ramen showing an upward trend in recent months, companies are jumping in to keep this momentum going forward. Lee Soo-jin has more.
More than 2 million packs of ramyeon are produced at this factory each month, and more than 400,000 of them are shipped overseas. But these figures are unsurprising as exports of South Korea's ramyeon surged more than 30% to reach nearly $600 million in value during the first half of the year. At this ramen factory, you can see how in certain steps of the production process, how South Korean companies have begun to target directly overseas consumers to keep this momentum going. The Seoul metropolitan government has teamed up with this local company to release Seoul ramyeon both domestically and abroad in hopes that ramyeon becomes a food that the capital city becomes known for globally. To further cement its popularity, they have produced ramyeon that's not just delicious but also healthy by using non-fried noodles instead of the more common fried noodles. Non-fried ramyeon noodles, just like the ones that are fried, also take on the famous wavy form that allows them to be cooked almost instantly. But instead of frying the noodles after they're steamed at high temperatures, they're dried by hot air. Each batch is air-cooled inside these machines before being dropped to conveyor belts below where they're packaged to be shipped abroad. But in their global expansion efforts, companies are at a crossroads of whether they should pursue a localized or a standardized marketing strategy.
Whether to localize our products was our biggest concern, but we've recently decided to deliver the most authentic taste to our global consumers. And we've done so by using Korea's Cheongyang chili pepper in our soup.
Still others have decided to localize some of their products. Buldak ramen, which went viral on social media, has flavors only available overseas, such as the habanero lime buldak, which was developed solely for North and South American consumers.
I think localization is a good strategy, but companies should also promote traditional Korean flavors as well, perhaps through TikTok challenges.
In the future, according to the expert, the key to continuing the export growth will be figuring out various ways to effectively market ramyeon that remains authentic in its taste. 이수진, Arirang News.
We are at the peak of this year's monsoon season here in South Korea. And locals, especially those in flood-prone areas, are doing all they can to prevent damage. An Sung-jin has this report.
Water sweeps through the streets. It soon fills every inch of the road, taking with it any object in its way, even people.
That's the road where a man died. The intersection heading down that way.
Water reached up to my shin while I was working, so most of the stores in the basement saw damage. I couldn't go home because the entire area was flooded.
This is a glimpse of what happened 2 years ago when heavy rain swept through, blocking off buildings and roads, causing chaos. Since then, people in the area fear that the same thing will happen again.
That manhole cover bounced off. We were so surprised. Then whenever it rains, it starts to stress me out. I still have a trauma from then.
Now the janitor brings out the water barrier to make sure that rain doesn't leak into restaurants and buildings. Some experts say the geographical layout is a factor as the area is low-lying. But one professor says that there is another crucial during times of heavy downpours.
As I said, if there is a problem with the drainage system in the city, and if it's left as it is, the same problems will occur every year. If leaves or trash gets clogged up, it needs to be cleaned out quickly by local district offices.
2 years ago, this area of Gangnam-gu district in capital Seoul saw massive damage from flash floods. Every year, flood-prone areas of the city face some degree of damage. How are cities trying to prevent this through an effective drainage system? There are many ways to keep the city's drainage system working and protect people's lives when flooding starts. For instance, local business owners like pharmacist Kim Young-nan would head out to the storm drain in front of her shop to make sure that it wasn't clogged.
If the storm drain is covered, the area becomes more flood-prone, so it needs a lot of attention.
Especially during the summer when it rains a lot, Kim says she puts extra effort to make sure.
It only takes a minute or two, and just a little bit of attention can reduce the damage. I started to help out to prevent further flooding.
Just like her, the district of Nuwongu cooperates with more than 2,000 different business owners to keep the storm drains clean by appointing them as protectors.
Previously, it would take 2 to 3 days for us to go around and check the drains. Now, with the help of these people, from receiving the report to fixing it can be done within a day. These people have volunteered to help take care of these storm drains.
They also added QR codes for each of the drains in the district to establish a more organized system to report any that aren't functioning properly. On average, around 20 reports come in daily. According to the National Disaster Management Research Institute, if the storm drain is covered even slightly more than half, the possibility of flooding doubles. Water can often spill out from manholes with the covers floating away. To prevent casualties, cities have implemented a preventive system. This metal plate, which can hold up to 400 kilograms, ensures that nobody falls through the manhole. These efforts are crucial, especially as South Korea this summer is looking to see one of its worst rainfalls yet, with 50% more precipitation compared to last year.
It's not necessarily that this year is the worst. Every year we may see stronger and stronger rain. If we look at the pattern for this year, the sea temperature around the peninsula is high, which constantly creates vapor, and there is an influx of low-pressure air from the west which clashes and creates rain clouds.
Meteorological predictions are difficult to make. No matter how many times we check weather apps, weather forecasts are rarely precise. What's important is keeping track of what's happening in real time and responding with proper measures. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and this is The World Now. Airlines over the weekend struggled to recover from Friday's global cyber outage, which left thousands stranded at airports. The effects of a flawed software update issued by one of the largest firms in the cybersecurity industry, CrowdStrike, extended beyond airports, with government agencies, banks, businesses, health and education sectors suffering from disruptions. Some 8.5 million devices were affected by the computer glitch, with the US one of the places hardest hit. According to flight tracking websites, more than 1,200 international flights passing by the United States have been cancelled as of early Sunday afternoon, while 5,000 domestic US flights were delayed on Sunday. Globally, there were some 46,000 total delays on Friday and at least 30,000 delays on Sunday, according to FlightAware.com. CrowdStrike CEO George Kurtz said that while a fix has been deployed, getting systems back in order will take time. Bangladesh's Supreme Court on Sunday scrapped most of its quotas on public sector government jobs, a policy that had sparked mass protests across the country, leaving at least 115 people dead. Bangladesh's Supreme Court's Appellate Division dismissed the lower court's order and directed that 93% of government jobs should be open to all candidates based on merit. After weeks of turmoil, army squads were deployed throughout the city of Dhaka, but surrounding streets were reportedly quiet in the wake of the decision. Law Minister Anisul Huq said that the government would implement the ruling within days. A third of all public sector jobs have been reserved for families and relatives of veterans from Bangladesh's War of Independence from Pakistan in 1971, but that has been reduced to just 5%. 2% will remain reserved for people from ethnic minorities and those with disabilities. Thousands of anti-tourism protesters took to the streets in Spain's Palma de Mallorca on Sunday as demonstrations against the country's key industry continue. According to authorities, around 10,000 protesters came out in Mallorca carrying makeshift models of cruise ships and planes, as well as pickets reading "No to mass tourism," "Stop private jets," and "Your luxury, our misery." Similar protests have also taken place in Barcelona, as well as Malaga and the Canary Islands, where residents say they are suffering from a tourist-driven rise in housing and living costs. The Balearic Islands, the second most popular holiday destination in Spain, with 14.4 million tourists last year, generate some 45% of their GDP from tourism. Slovenian cyclist Tadej Pogacar won this year's Tour de France on Sunday to complete a sensational Tour de France Giro d'Italia double. He becomes the first person since 1998 to win cycling's two biggest races in the same year. Pogacar cemented his victory by winning the stage 21 time trial, cycling the 33.7-kilometer individual time trial from Monaco to Nice in 45 minutes and 24 seconds. It was the sixth stage of the Tour won by Pogacar and extended by his lead over defending champion Jonas Vingegaard of Denmark to a margin of 6 minutes and 17 seconds.
Good morning. The capital and Gangwon-do province are seeing on and off rainfall this morning. In central regions are forecast to see sporadic heavy rain along with strong winds today. So the capital region could see more than 80 millimeters of downpours. In Chungcheong-do provinces could also see rain passing by during the day today. Many regions had a tropical night overnight, and Gangneung had a super tropical night with overnight temperatures staying above 30 degrees Celsius all night. And it's Taeseok today, the hottest day of the year. Rain-free regions will be very hot with heat wave warnings and advisories being in place. Daegu and Gyeongju get up to 35 degrees. Seoul sees a high of 28 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Monsoon rain continues in central regions through Wednesday. Meanwhile, tropical storm Kemi, which developed northeast of Manila, Philippines, is forecast to make landfall in southern regions of Shanghai, China later next week. The typhoon might impact the Korean peninsula, and we'll keep you updated as the situation develops. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day and Arirang. Have a wonderful start to the week.